beyond the shadows of suffering. Chapter 1. A Cruel Beginning. The small village of Ravensshire was known for its peaceful surroundings, where children played freely and families lived in harmony. But for Ryan and Emily, life had taken a cruel turn. Their mother, Elena, had been the most loving and kind-hearted woman. She was their protector, their warmth in the coldest days, and the light in their darkest nights. But fate had been merciless. A sudden illness took her away, leaving their world shattered. Their father, William, was a hard-working man, but he was also deeply heartbroken. He mourned his wife's loss, and in his desperation to bring stability to his home, he remarried too soon. This decision would change Ryan and Emily's lives forever. His new wife, Marianne, was a woman of beauty but no kindness. She hid her cruel nature behind a sweet smile, deceiving William into believing she would care for his children. But the moment she stepped into their home, everything changed. At first, she pretended to be caring, but as days passed, her true colors surfaced. She saw Ryan and Emily as burdens, not children. She believed they were competition for her own children, Oliver and Sophia. "You two are old enough to work," Marianne sneered one morning, throwing a broom at Ryan, who was only 10 years old. "The days of playing like little royals are over." Emily, just 8, clung to Ryan's hand, afraid of this new world without their mother's love. Their father, though aware of Marianne's harshness, remained silent. His once strong voice had weakened under his new wife's rule. Marianne was determined to erase every trace of their mother. She locked away Elena's belongings, forbade any mention of her, and treated Ryan and Emily like unwanted servants. "From now on, you will cook, clean, and do whatever I say," she declared coldly. The siblings had no choice. Their childhood dreams of school and laughter were replaced with endless chores. Every day was a struggle, but they had one thing that Marianne could never take away: their love for each other. As the years passed, the suffering only deepened. But in the depths of their sorrow, a spark of hope remained. This was just the beginning. Chapter 2. Endless Toil. The once warm home that Ryan and Emily had known had turned into a place of misery. Their mother's laughter, which used to fill the house, had been replaced by the harsh voice of their stepmother, Marianne. From sunrise to sunset, their tiny hands were never at rest. "Ryan, wake up, you lazy boy." Marianne's voice echoed through the small house as she banged on the wooden door of his room. At just 10 years old, he was forced to work like a servant. Ryan rubbed his tired eyes, only to see his little sister Emily beside him. She was still asleep, exhausted from the previous day's work. But they didn't have the luxury to rest. Marianne stormed into the room, dragging Ryan out by his collar. "You think this house will clean itself?" she spat. "Get to work. And take your useless sister with you." Emily was barely 8, yet Marianne had no mercy on her. She was forced to scrub the floors, wash clothes, and serve food, while Marianne's own children, Oliver and Sophia, lived like royalty. "Why don't Oliver and Sophia help, Mother?" Ryan asked one day, mustering up courage. Marianne's eyes burned with anger. She slapped him so hard that his cheek turned red. "My children are not meant for dirty work," she shouted. "They deserve a good life. Unlike you two, who are nothing but burdens." Emily clutched Ryan's hand, tears welling in her eyes, but she didn't cry. She had learned that crying only made Marianne angrier. Their father, William, saw everything. His heart ached for his children, but he was trapped. Whenever he tried to defend them, Marianne manipulated him with cruel words. "They're my children too, Marianne," he said one evening. "At least let them study." Marianne faked tears, her voice dripping with false sorrow. "Oh, William," she sobbed. "I work so hard to take care of them, yet they never respect me. They disobey me at every turn. Don't you trust your wife?" And just like that, William fell silent once again. Ryan and Emily knew they couldn't count on their father. They had only each other. The years passed, and their childhood slipped away. While other children went to school, Ryan and Emily remained trapped in an endless cycle of work. But deep inside, a fire burned within them. They refused to believe that this was their fate forever. And so, in the dead of night, Ryan made a promise to Emily. "One day, we'll escape this place," he whispered, gripping her hand. "I don't know when, but I swear we'll have a better life." Emily looked at him, her eyes filled with faith. "I believe you, Ryan," she whispered back. They had nothing but each other, but sometimes that was enough. Chapter 3. A Father's Silent Pain. The sound of a broom sweeping across the dusty floor echoed in the dimly lit house. Ryan and Emily worked tirelessly, their small hands sore and their backs aching from endless labor. Their father, William, sat silently at the dinner table, staring at his untouched meal. His heart felt heavy with guilt as he watched his children serve food like servants in their own home. Marianne, his wife, sat beside him, eating without a care in the world. Her children, Oliver and Sophia, laughed and talked joyfully, unaware of the suffering of their step-siblings. Emily approached the table with a plate of food for Marianne. Her hands trembled as she carefully placed it in front of her stepmother. "What took you so long?" Marianne snapped, throwing a sharp glare at the little girl. "Can't you do anything right?" Emily flinched but remained silent. She had learned long ago that answering back would only make things worse. Ryan, standing nearby, clenched his fists. His blood boiled every time he saw his sister being mistreated, but what could he do? They were powerless in this house. William's heart ached as he watched the scene unfold. He wanted to stand up, to defend his children, to tell Marianne to stop. But every time he tried, she twisted the situation in her favor. "They disrespect me, William," she would cry. "I do everything for this family, and they never appreciate me." And every time, William fell into silence, too weak to fight back. That night, as everyone slept, William sat alone by the dim candlelight, lost in thought. He picked up an old photograph of Elena, his late wife. She had been a kind, loving woman who had always put their children first. If she were alive, things would have been different. She would never have allowed this cruelty. A tear slipped from his eye. "Elena, I failed them," he whispered. A small knock on the door startled him. He turned to see Ryan standing there, his face tired but determined. "Father," Ryan said quietly, "why don't you help us?" William's throat tightened. What could he say? That he was weak? That he had made a mistake by marrying Marianne? That he had lost his voice in his own home? He looked away, ashamed. Ryan waited for an answer, but none came. Disappointed, he turned away and walked back to his room, his heart sinking deeper than before. William sat in the dark, the weight of his failure pressing down on his soul. That night, he made a silent promise to himself. If there ever came a day when he could help his children escape this misery, he would. But until that day arrived, all he could do was watch in silence, drowning in his own regrets. Chapter 4. Dreams in Chains. The village school stood at the heart of Ravenshire, its large wooden doors welcoming children eager to learn. Every morning, Ryan and Emily watched from a distance as other children walked through those doors, laughing and chatting about their lessons. For them, school was just a distant dream, one that their stepmother, Marianne, had crushed before it could even begin. "You two don't need school," she had said coldly. "Education is for those who have a future. You belong in this house, doing your work." Ryan, now 13, felt his chest burn with anger whenever he saw the school. He knew he was smart, that he could learn if only given the chance. But Marianne made sure he remained nothing more than a servant. Emily, now 11, shared the same dream. She wanted to read, to write, to escape into stories that took her far away from her painful reality. But every time she picked up a book, Marianne snatched it away. "Books won't feed you," she sneered, tossing it into the fire. "Now get back to work." Despite everything, Ryan and Emily refused to give up on their dreams. At night, when the house was silent and everyone was asleep, Ryan sat near the dim candlelight, tracing letters in the dirt floor, teaching himself to read with old scraps of newspaper he had found. Emily watched him, her eyes full of admiration. "Teach me too," she whispered. And so, in those stolen moments, Ryan became Emily's teacher. They whispered the alphabet, repeated words, and slowly, letter by letter, they built a secret world of knowledge, a world that Marianne could never take away from them. But their dreams were not without risk. One evening, Marianne caught Ryan hiding a tattered book behind his back. "What is this?" she hissed, snatching it from his hands. Ryan stood firm, refusing to show fear. "It's just an old book," he said. Marianne's eyes blazed with fury. "You think you're smart, don't you?" she sneered. "You'll never be more than a servant in this house. Accept it." She ripped the book apart, the torn pages fluttering to the ground like fallen dreams. Emily let out a soft gasp, but Ryan held her back, his hands trembling with rage. Marianne leaned closer, her voice full of venom. "Forget your dreams, boy. They will only bring you pain." That night, Ryan didn't sleep. His fists clenched, his heart burned with determination. He would prove her wrong. One day, he would escape this place, with Emily by his side. And when that day came, Marianne would see just how wrong she was. Chapter 5. A Glimmer of Hope. The sun hung low in the sky, painting the village in golden hues. The air was filled with the scent of freshly baked bread from the baker's shop down the street. But in Marianne's house, hope was a stranger. Ryan and Emily toiled as always, scrubbing the floors, washing dishes, and fetching water from the well. Their hands were rough, their backs ached, but they had learned to bear the pain in silence. That evening, as they were cleaning the front yard, a man on horseback arrived. He was dressed in fine clothes, his leather boots gleaming in the sunlight. He dismounted and knocked on the door. Marianne, always eager to impress important visitors, hurried to greet him. "Good evening, sir," she said, flashing a fake smile. "How can I help you?" The man removed his hat and spoke in a deep voice. "My name is Mr. Dawson. I am the headmaster of the town school. I have come to speak with Mr. William." William, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, stood up in surprise. "Headmaster Dawson?" he asked, stepping forward. "What brings you here?" Mr. Dawson glanced at Ryan and Emily, who stood in the background, their faces smeared with dirt, but their eyes filled with curiosity. "I heard from a few villagers about these two children," Mr. Dawson said, gesturing toward Ryan and Emily. "They say the boy is bright and hardworking, and the girl, she has a natural curiosity for learning." Ryan and Emily exchanged stunned glances. No one had ever spoken of them like that before. Marianne's face darkened. "Oh, they're nothing but troublemakers," she said quickly. "They don't need school. I keep them busy with household chores so they don't waste time." Mr. Dawson narrowed his eyes. "Education is never a waste," he said firmly. "Every child deserves a chance to learn." William, sensing an opportunity, spoke up. "Mr. Dawson, do you think there's a way for them to study?" he asked hesitantly. Mr. Dawson nodded. "Our school offers scholarships for bright children," he said. "If Ryan and Emily can pass a simple test, they can attend without any cost." For the first time in years, Ryan and Emily felt a spark of hope. But before they could even speak, Marianne slammed her hand against the table. "Absolutely not," she snapped. "They have work to do. There's no time for foolishness like school." Ryan felt his hope slip away, but Mr. Dawson stood his ground. "It is not your decision to make, madam," he said sternly. "It is their right." Marianne's lips curled in anger, but she knew better than to argue with the headmaster. She turned to William, her eyes filled with silent warning. William hesitated. He had spent years being controlled by Marianne, too weak to fight back. But tonight, he saw something in his children's eyes that he hadn't seen in years: hope. And for once, he found the courage to act. "They will take the test," he said firmly. Ryan and Emily gasped in disbelief. Marianne's face twisted with fury, but she could do nothing. The decision had been made. As Mr. Dawson prepared to leave, he turned to Ryan and Emily. "Study well," he said. "Your future is in your hands now." As his horse disappeared into the distance, Ryan and Emily stood there, hearts pounding. For the first time in their lives, they had been given a chance. Now, they just had to take it. Chapter 6: A Fight for Freedom. The night was unusually quiet, except for the soft rustling of pages under the dim candlelight. Ryan and Emily sat on the cold floor, their eyes scanning the worn-out pieces of newspaper Ryan had collected over time. For the first time, they were not just dreaming of education, they were preparing for it. "Ryan," Emily whispered, struggling to read a word. "What does this say?" Ryan leaned closer, tracing the letters with his finger. "It says opportunity," he said. "It means a chance to do something better." Emily smiled. "Then this test is our opportunity." Ryan nodded, determination burning in his eyes. But their biggest obstacle was still inside the house: Marianne. She had made it clear that she would not let them succeed. The very next morning, she woke them up earlier than usual. "There's no time to waste," she snapped. "The floors need scrubbing, the laundry must be washed, and the firewood is running low." Ryan tightened his fists. He knew exactly what she was doing, keeping them too tired to study. "Step aside, Ryan," she ordered as she dumped a large basket of clothes in front of him. Ryan stared at the pile, his mind racing. If he obeyed, he wouldn't have time to study. If he refused, she would punish them. Emily grabbed his hand. "Don't give up," she whispered. Taking a deep breath, Ryan made a decision. "We'll do the chores," he said. "But after that, we will study." Marianne's lips curled into a sneer. You think you can balance both? Let's see. For the next 2 days, she doubled their workload. Ryan carried heavy sacks of wheat from the market until his legs ached. Emily scrubbed the floor until her hands were red and sore. By nightfall, they collapsed on the floor, too exhausted to even keep their eyes open. And Marian watched with satisfaction, convinced they would fail. But she underestimated them. Even with their aching bodies, Ryan and Emily forced themselves to study. Ryan whispered equations as he drifted to sleep. Emily traced letters in the dust before Marian swept them away. They would not give up. The night before the test, Ryan stole a moment with his father. "Father," he said, his voice low, "will you come with us tomorrow?" William looked at his son. His face was worn, his eyes filled with regret. But at that moment, he saw a strength in Ryan that reminded him of his late wife, Elena. "Yes," he said, "I will be there." Ryan smiled. For the first time, he truly felt like his father was on their side. As he and Emily closed their books, they knew tomorrow was the beginning of their fight for freedom. They just had to win. Chapter 7. The Day of the Test. The morning sun rose over Ravensshire, casting long golden rays across the small village. But inside Marianne's house, tension hung thick in the air. Today was the test, the one chance Ryan and Emily had to change their future. Ryan buttoned his worn-out shirt, his hands slightly trembling. He looked at Emily, who was tying her hair neatly. Her face was pale but determined. "Are you ready?" he asked. She nodded. "We've worked too hard to fail now." But Marianne was not ready to let them go so easily. Just as they were about to step out, she stood in their path. "Where do you think you're going?" she asked, arms crossed. "To take the test," Ryan said firmly. Marianne let out a cold laugh. "Not before finishing your chores." She pointed to a pile of dirty dishes, an unlit fireplace, and a heap of clothes that needed washing. Ryan felt his blood boil. He knew exactly what she was doing, delaying them until it was too late. "Father," Ryan turned to William, hoping he would intervene. William hesitated, glancing between his wife and his children. His hands clenched into fists. Then, for the first time in years, he defied Marianne. "They're not doing the chores today," he said. "They are going to the test." Marianne's face darkened. "William, you—" But William did not back down. "Enough, Marianne. I have been silent for too long. They deserve this chance." Ryan and Emily stared at their father in shock. For years, he had been weak. But today, he stood up for them. Marianne let out a hiss of frustration, but knew she had lost this battle. "Fine," she spat. "Go. But don't come crying when you fail." Ryan and Emily rushed out the door before she could change her mind. William followed closely behind, and for the first time, they walked together as a family. The school was larger than they had imagined. Children were seated at wooden desks, their pencils scratching against the paper as Mr. Dawson walked between them. Ryan and Emily took their seats, their hearts pounding. "You may begin," Mr. Dawson announced. Ryan stared at the first question. It was simple, but his hands were shaking. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. "We studied for this. We can do this." Emily glanced at him and nodded. They were ready. They picked up their pencils and began writing. Outside, William sat on a bench, whispering a silent prayer for his children. And back home, Marian watched the empty house, for the first time feeling something she never had before: fear. Because deep down, she knew she was losing control. Chapter 8. The results. The test was over. The hardest part was behind them. But now came the waiting, the endless, nerve-wracking waiting. Ryan and Emily sat on a wooden bench outside the school, their hands clenched together. Their hearts pounded with fear and hope. Mr. Dawson had said the results would be announced the next morning. One night stood between them and their future. As they walked back home with their father, Emily tugged at Ryan's sleeve. "Do you think we did well?" she whispered. Ryan forced a smile. "We did our best. That's all that matters." But deep inside, he was just as terrified as she was. A tense night. When they reached home, Marianne was waiting for them. She didn't speak as they walked in, but her cold gaze followed them. It was clear she wanted them to fail. The night stretched on, long and heavy. Ryan lay awake, staring at the ceiling. "What if we fail?" Emily's voice broke the silence. Ryan turned toward her. He couldn't let her lose hope. "Then we try again," he said firmly. "No one can stop us from learning." Emily nodded, her fear fading just a little. And at that moment, they both promised themselves, no matter what happened, they would never give up. The next morning, the schoolyard was filled with children and parents, all waiting for the results. Ryan and Emily stood near the entrance, their father beside them. Marian hadn't come. Mr. Dawson stepped forward, holding a list in his hands. He began reading the names of the students who had passed. Ryan felt his breath catch in his throat. Then, Ryan Carter and Emily Carter. They had done it. Ryan and Emily froze for a moment, unable to believe what they had just heard. Then, suddenly, Emily let out a small cry of joy, throwing her arms around Ryan. "We did it," she whispered, her voice shaking. Their father wiped a tear from his eye. For the first time in years, he felt truly proud. Mr. Dawson approached them with a smile. "You both worked hard. You deserve this." Ryan and Emily nodded, their hearts filled with a new kind of hope, the kind that no one could take away. But back home, when Marian heard the news, her face twisted with rage. She had lost control over them. And she knew this was just the beginning. Chapter 9. A New Beginning. For the first time in their lives, Ryan and Emily walked into a classroom as students. Their hearts raced with excitement as they sat at their desks, surrounded by books and papers. This was the life they had only dreamed of. The school was simple, but to them, it felt like a palace. The wooden desks, the chalkboard, the smell of freshly written ink, it was all magical. Ryan ran his fingers over the pages of his first textbook. It felt unreal. Emily turned to him and whispered, "Ryan, can you believe this?" He smiled. "We made it, Emily." But school was not easy. While the other students had been learning for years, Ryan and Emily had to catch up. Ryan struggled with difficult equations, while Emily had trouble reading long passages. Sometimes they felt frustrated. Sometimes they felt like they didn't belong. But every night, after finishing their schoolwork, they studied harder. Their father helped when he could, but mostly they taught themselves, just like they had always done. And slowly, they started improving. Back at home, Marianne's anger only grew. She had lost her power over them. Now, instead of cleaning and cooking for her, they spent their time studying. She slammed pots and pans, muttering under her breath, "Useless brats." She tried to assign them chores. They refused. She yelled at William. He ignored her. For the first time, she was the one who felt powerless. But while Ryan and Emily worked hard for their future, Marianne's own children, Henry and Sarah, did nothing. Since childhood, they had never lifted a finger. Marianne had spoiled them, believing they would always have an easy life. But now, as they grew older, their laziness became a problem. They had no skills, no education, no future. And while Ryan and Emily were climbing higher, Henry and Sarah were falling behind. Marianne refused to see it. She still believed her children were better. But deep inside, she felt a strange fear creeping in. What if Ryan and Emily became more successful than her own children? What if she had made a mistake? Chapter 10: Success and Jealousy. Months passed. Ryan and Emily were no longer struggling students, they were excelling. Ryan had a sharp mind for numbers and quickly became one of the best in mathematics. Emily, who had once struggled with reading, now wrote essays that impressed even Mr. Dawson. Their dedication amazed everyone. But back at home, Marianne seethed with jealousy. Every evening, she watched Ryan and Emily return home, their faces glowing with happiness. She couldn't stand it. How was it that the children she had mistreated were succeeding, while her own children were doing nothing? Henry spent his days lazing around, complaining about everything. Sarah refused to do any work, expecting life to be handed to her. Marianne had never taught them discipline, and now they were suffering because of it. But instead of blaming herself, she blamed Ryan and Emily. "They think they are better than us," she muttered under her breath. Her hatred deepened. She wanted them to fail. One day, Mr. Dawson called Ryan and Emily to his office. "You two have made remarkable progress," he said with a proud smile. He handed them a letter. It was an invitation to a scholarship exam. "If you pass, you will receive full funding to continue your education in the city," he explained. Ryan and Emily's eyes widened. This was their chance. They ran home to tell their father. William was overjoyed. But when Marianne overheard, her blood boiled. "City education?" she spat. "They are nothing but village kids. They don't belong there." But no one was listening to her anymore. Her voice no longer had power. That night, as Ryan and Emily prepared for their scholarship exam, Marianne sat alone in the dark. For the first time, she felt the consequences of her cruelty. She had tried to ruin them, but instead, they were rising above her. And deep in her heart, a terrifying thought crept in. Had she lost everything? Chapter 11: The Final Test. The day of the scholarship exam arrived. Ryan and Emily stood outside the city school, feeling both excited and nervous. The school was huge, much bigger than their village school. Students from different places had come to take the test. Some looked confident, others just as nervous as Ryan and Emily. Ryan took a deep breath. "We've worked hard for this." Emily nodded. "We can do it." With determination in their hearts, they stepped inside. The hall was silent. The only sound was the scratching of pens on paper. Ryan focused on the math problems in front of him. Some were difficult, but he had prepared well. Emily, meanwhile, read each question carefully. She reminded herself to stay calm. Time passed quickly. Finally, the examiner announced, "Time's up. Please submit your papers." Ryan and Emily looked at each other. It was over. Now, all they could do was wait. Back in the village, Marianne was restless. She had tried to stop them before, but nothing worked. Now, if they passed this exam, they would leave forever. She sat in her room, thinking about Henry and Sarah. Her own children had no ambition, no skills, and no education. And whose fault was that? For the first time, she realized her mistake. She had given Henry and Sarah everything, except the ability to stand on their own. Now, as Ryan and Emily were reaching for success, her own children were sinking into failure. What would happen to them? The thought terrified her. A week later, the results were announced. Ryan and Emily held hands tightly as Mr. Dawson read out the names. Then, "Ryan Carter and Emily Carter, congratulations! You have won the scholarship." Tears filled Emily's eyes. They had done it. Ryan felt like shouting with joy. Their hard work had paid off. Their father hugged them, his voice shaking with emotion. "I always knew you could do it." But when Marianne heard the news, she collapsed into a chair. She had spent years trying to break them, but they had only grown stronger. And now they were leaving. Forever. Chapter 12. A New Life. The day of departure arrived. Ryan and Emily stood at the village bus stop with their father. Their bags were packed. A new journey awaited them. William held their hands. His eyes were filled with both pride and sadness. "My children," he said softly, "you have endured so much, yet you never gave up. I know you will make me proud." Emily hugged him tightly. "We'll never forget you, Father." Ryan nodded. "Once we settle down, we'll bring you to live with us." William smiled, his heart full. For the first time, he felt hope. Across the street, Marianne watched them leave. Her face was pale, her eyes filled with unspoken emotions. She wanted to say something, but the words never came. She had always treated them cruelly, believing they were beneath her own children. But now her own children had nothing. Henry and Sarah stood beside her, confused and lost. They had no skills, no knowledge, and no future. Marianne had given them everything, except the ability to survive in the real world. And now she was watching the ones she had mistreated rise above her own family. For the first time, she felt regret. But it was too late. The bus left the village, carrying Ryan and Emily toward their dreams. As the village disappeared behind them, they felt no sadness, only excitement. A new life awaited them. A life of freedom, success, and happiness. They had suffered, but they had won. And as they looked ahead, they knew their future would be brighter than ever.